Okay, r/AskReddit, what was the fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life? Story number 1. There was a guy in my town, early 30s, had a wife, 2 kids, and a solid job as a truck driver. He wasn't rich, but he was responsible, took care of his family, and everyone liked him. One day, he bought a scratch-off lottery ticket. And he won. Not life-changing money, but $50,000, enough to make things a little easier. Except instead of paying off debts or investing, he quit his job, started gambling, and convinced himself he could turn it into millions. Within 6 months, he lost everything. His wife left. The house was foreclosed. Last I heard, he was sleeping in his car, still chasing the high of that first win. Story number 2. I used to work with a guy who was on track to become a lawyer. Smart, disciplined, had everything planned out. Then, one night at a bar, he got into a stupid argument with a stranger. It turned into a fight. One punch. That's all it took. The other guy hit his head on the pavement and never woke up. My coworker was sentenced to 15 years. His whole future, gone in seconds. Story number 3. A guy from my old neighborhood had everything going for him. He was engaged, had just bought a house, and was about to start his dream job. Then he got a text from his ex. She wanted to meet up, just to talk. His fiancée begged him not to go. He went anyway. One thing led to another, and they hooked up. The next day, his fiancée found out. She canceled the wedding, left him, and put the house up for sale. Then his job offer? Revoked. His ex had told him she could help him get a position at her firm. Turns out, she was lying. Within a month, he had lost everything. All for a moment of weakness. Story number 4. There was a guy a few years ahead of me in school who had a government job, a wife, and 2 little kids. He was the definition of average, but in a good way. Stable. Responsible. Then one day, his coworker joked about how he wouldn't last a day in prison. For some reason, this set him off. He became obsessed with proving he was tough. He started hanging out with a rougher crowd, got involved in illegal street fights, and eventually robbed a gas station just to see if he could. Got caught, of course. Now he's doing 12 years and, ironically, is in the exact prison he swore he could survive. Story number 5. A girl I knew in college had a great internship lined up in New York. She had worked so hard for it. She was smart, disciplined, and had a bright future. But before she left, she and some friends went to a music festival. She took 1 tab of acid. And never came back the same. Something snapped in her brain. She started having psychotic breaks, hearing voices, and believing she was being watched. She never made it to New York. Never even finished school. Last I heard, she was living in a care facility because she couldn't function on her own anymore. One drug. One bad trip. And her life was completely derailed. Story number 6. There was a guy in my town who had been dating his girlfriend for years. Everyone thought they'd get married. He was saving up for a ring, working overtime, completely devoted to her. Then she cheated on him. He lost his mind. Instead of walking away, he broke into her apartment and destroyed everything. Her clothes, her furniture, her electronics, all of it. She called the cops. He got 5 years in prison for burglary and destruction of property. By the time he got out, she had moved on. Meanwhile, he had a criminal record and no future. A lifetime of consequences for a few hours of blind rage. Story number 7. A guy I worked with had a perfect little family. 2 kids, a wife who adored him, and a stable job in finance. Then one day, he got caught shoplifting. Not food. Not necessities. Luxury watches. Expensive clothes. Things he could afford. Turns out, he had been stealing for years, just for the thrill of it. When he got caught, his wife left with the kids, his employer found out and fired him, and he had to sell his house to cover legal fees. Everything he had worked for, gone in an instant. And for what? A stupid rush. Story number 8, there was a guy in my town who got into day trading. He started small, made some money, got addicted to the rush. One day, he decided to go all in on a high-risk stock. Took out a $100,000 loan against his house, convinced he was about to be rich. The stock tanked within hours. He lost everything. The bank took his house, his wife took the kids and left, and within a year, he was living in his car. He had been a homeowner with a family and a career. Now he begs for money outside grocery stores. All because he bet it all and lost. Story number 9, a woman I knew was married to a really great guy. They had been together for over a decade, had kids, a house, and a comfortable life. One day, she had a random fling with a guy from her gym. She thought it would be a one-time thing. But the guy got obsessed. He started messaging her husband, sending proof of everything. Her husband left her instantly. Took the kids, moved out, never looked back. She went from having a perfect life to being completely alone in an empty house. She still cries about it years later. Story number 10, there was this guy at my old job who had a great career ahead of him. He was well liked, got promoted quickly, and had a reputation for being responsible. Then he went out for drinks with some coworkers. Someone offered him cocaine. Just a bump. Just to try it. Within 2 years, he was fired, divorced, and had lost custody of his kids. Last I heard, he was living in motels, burning through whatever money he could scrape together. All because of one line at a bar. Story number 11, a guy I went to high school with had a full-ride football scholarship. Big future ahead of him. One night, at a party, someone dared him to jump off a roof into a pool. He was drunk. He did it. He missed. Broke his neck. He survived, but he's paralyzed from the waist down. Scholarship? Gone. Football career? Over. He went from being a rising star to needing help getting out of bed. Because of one reckless decision. Story number 12, a guy my dad worked with had been married for 15 years. Good wife, 2 kids, stable job. Then he got bored. Started texting younger women. Just flirting at first, then meeting up. One of those women turned out to be 17. Cops got involved. His wife left. His kids refused to see him. He lost his job, his house, and his entire reputation. Now he's a registered sex offender, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, completely alone. For a few months of excitement. Story number 13, I knew a guy who was weeks away from becoming a firefighter. He had trained for years, was in peak shape, and had a bright future ahead. One night, he went out drinking with his buddies. Got behind the wheel. Hit a pedestrian. The guy didn't die, but he was permanently disabled. My friend lost his firefighter job before it even started. Got sued into oblivion and now works a dead-end job just to pay off his debts. One drunken mistake, and his whole life derailed. Story number 14, this girl I went to college with was obsessed with Instagram. She always wanted the perfect shot, the perfect post, the perfect life. One day, she and some friends went hiking. She wanted a selfie on the edge of a cliff. They warned her. She didn't listen. The rock gave way. She fell hundreds of feet. She survived, but barely. Shattered pelvis, spinal fractures, permanent nerve damage. She's in a wheelchair for life. All for a few likes. Story number 15, a guy from my old neighborhood had a steady job as a mechanic, a nice girlfriend, and a close group of friends. Then he started hanging out with some new people. They introduced him to meth. Within a year, he was unrecognizable. Lost his job. Lost his girlfriend. His teeth started falling out. He stole from his family and got arrested for breaking into a liquor store. He went from a hard-working guy with a future to an addict with a record. All because he said yes once. Story number 16. A guy my uncle knew was a respected surgeon. Decades of schooling, a six-figure salary, a great reputation. One night, he had a few drinks at a party and got pulled over for a DUI. The hospital found out. He lost his medical license. Couldn't practice ever again. He went from being a wealthy, respected doctor to working retail, just to pay rent. All because he didn't call an Uber. Story number 17. A guy in my town was engaged to his high school sweetheart. They had been together for nearly a decade, planning a wedding, saving for a house. Then, on his bachelor party weekend, he slept with a stripper. It was a drunken mistake, but his friends told him to keep quiet. Unfortunately for him, he caught an STD. When his fiancée went in for a routine checkup, she tested positive. He had no choice but to confess everything. She canceled the wedding, called off the engagement, and moved out within a week. Now she's married to someone else, and he's still single, still regretting it. Story number 18. A guy I used to work with had a solid career, a house, and a newborn baby. Then one night, at a work conference, he decided to get high with some coworkers. Just one time, just to unwind. The drug they took? Laced. He hallucinated so badly that he stripped naked, ran into the hotel lobby, and started screaming about being chased by demons. Cops were called. He got arrested, fired, and completely blacklisted in his industry. His wife left, taking the baby with her. One bad decision at a company event, and his life was over. Story number 19. A guy from my old gym was obsessed with bodybuilding. He had the perfect physique, a great job as a personal trainer, and a growing online following. Then he decided to experiment with steroids. Within months, his personality changed. He became aggressive, violent, paranoid. One night, during a fight with his girlfriend, he lost control and hit her. She called the cops. He was arrested for domestic violence, fired from his job, and completely ostracized. Last I heard, he was homeless, still using, still furious at the world. Story number 20. A woman I knew was married to a wealthy businessman. She had a dream life, beautiful home, expensive vacations, unlimited spending. But she got bored. Started sleeping with her personal trainer. It was fun, until she got pregnant. Her husband immediately knew the child wasn't his. They had fertility struggles for years. He filed for divorce and, thanks to a prenup, she got almost nothing. Her trainer? Vanished. She went from having everything to struggling to pay rent within a year. All for a thrill. Story number 21. A guy from my high school got into online gambling. At first, it was just for fun. A few small wins, a few losses, nothing major. Then one day, he hit big. He won $250,000. Instead of cashing out, he got greedy. Convinced himself he could double it. Within 2 days, he had lost every single penny. He drained his savings trying to win it back, then took out loans. Now he's deep in debt, working 2 jobs, and can barely afford groceries. The worst part? He never even saw the money in real life. Just numbers on a screen. Story number 22. A girl I knew in college was obsessed with a guy who didn't love her back. She was convinced they were meant to be. So she did something crazy. She faked a pregnancy. Told everyone, made a big show of it, even had a fake ultrasound she edited herself. It worked, for a while. The guy stayed, started preparing to be a dad. Then, a mutual friend figured it out. Everything unraveled. The guy left, she was humiliated, and people completely cut her off. She had to transfer schools, because the entire campus shunned her. Story number 23. A guy I used to work with had a beautiful wife, 2 kids, and a house in the suburbs. One day, he stole a candy bar. Not because he couldn't afford it, just for the thrill. He got away with it. So he did it again. Then again. Soon, he wasn't just stealing candy. He started lifting expensive electronics, clothing, and even luxury watches. Eventually, he got caught on camera. When the cops searched his house, they found thousands of dollars worth of stolen goods. His wife left him, his job fired him, and he spent a year in jail. A six-figure salary, a perfect life, gone over some stupid impulse. Story number 24. A guy from my old neighborhood had everything going for him. He was on track to become a police officer. Had a girlfriend who adored him and a tight-knit group of friends. Then, one night, at a party, someone dared him to try heroin. He said, just once. Within a year, he was stealing from his own family to feed his addiction. His girlfriend left. His dream job was gone. He was in and out of rehab and jail for years. The last time I saw him, he was living in a tent behind a gas station. One dare. One decision. And it ruined him forever. Numbers on a screen.